implementation.
Dynamic
Right?
parameter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. So dynamic parameter, resource pool we discussed, right? So and after that, so
Mhm.
control center. So
Yes.
did you get a chance to explore the control center by using the admin?
No, actually, I tried with that, but I don't have an access actually.
You don't have access. Okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah, and
sometimes they
I'm trying with my admin is my friend, just so whenever it is free on the weekends, I can try and use it just to
yeah.
explore, and I can delete. I will get it deleted once it's done. That schedule is deleted.
Okay, okay.
I do have one question actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please
So
go ahead. Yeah.
So, what I usually observe is like we do have a Tivoli, I mean, as a scheduler we are using. Okay, so the jobs which we are scheduling in the Tivoli as a scheduler, it is in the sync with the control center. So how do we get that sync in the from the between the control center means between the ab initio,
Yeah, understood. Abination.
yeah,
No, it is no
scheduler
way.
and the
Okay, it is no way relation with the scheduler. Okay, so it is more with respect to the ETL server. So the
okay,
server where
the
the
host
ab
you
initio
are saying.
process. Yeah, the host, run host. So control
Okay.
center will connect to the ETL server. So on your run host, so we need to have the web server installed. So only requirement is we need to have a web server, and we need to have two processes which are up and running in the ETL server. So one is bridge process, reporter process. So in the web server also, so what we do is so we connect to the run host with the help of the bridge process. Okay, so using the bridge process, we connect to the run host. So
Yeah.
then for getting the tracking details, there is a reporter process. So the reporter process has to be executed from the run host. So what we do is from the web server, we connect to this reporter process. We connect to this reporter process to get the tracking details. So once we get the tracking details, it just displayed in the control center. Control center is just an UI. So where it gets all the
Okay.
required details from the run host only, from the ETL server only, with the help of this bridge and reporter processes.
Okay. So we do have a command for the AB just to check the bridge, right? AB app, and we will be using that command to check whether the bridge is
Right. App
right.
bridge,
So
app bridge
app bridge,
status.
right?
Yeah, that's
Status,
right.
right? So to check the status, so do we have the same for the reporter, or what the
Yes, yes. It is app reporter. It is AB hyphen reporter.
okay, okay,
AB
okay,
hyphen
okay.
reporter status. The same command. So the same way that
Same
we start the
command
bridge
we
and report, right? So start the bridge, and we have to specify the XML config file. The same way for reporter also, there is a reporter config XML file. So we have to use that XML config XML file for starting the reporter process. We can use the same commands. So whatever we used for bridge, the same. So we have to replace the bridge with the reporter, and we have to specify the corresponding configuration file, corresponding XML file we have to provide.
and who is the one who will do this all the settings? Is we are
Administrator,
the one, or
administrator. No,
admin
we
only,
should not.
right?
Admin. But we should
Right,
know what the
because
admin team, yeah, what the admin team
yeah,
does. We
yeah,
should
no,
know,
no,
right?
no,
Yeah,
that yeah. So you said right, reporter, right? In the last
correct,
session only,
correct.
you also mentioned. Uh, but will it be fine for you to just explain for the 5 minutes for the reporter? I
Yeah,
got
sure.
the background, but I somehow miss. I am not able to recall the session. Sorry, that reporter one. What I
Not a
miss.
problem. We can, yeah, not a problem. We can discuss on that. Okay. So, so in our run host, okay, in our run host, so there are two processes. Okay. So there are two
Mm-hmm,
processes. One is a bridge process. Okay, so one is a
mm-hmm.
bridge process, so there are two processes. One is bridge process, and another one is a reporter process. So these two processes should run from the run host, from the ETL server. Okay, so what the
Okay.
purpose of this process is? So this bridge process will establish a connection,
Connection. Hmm.
yeah, from
Web
the
server.
run
Yeah.
host to the web server.
Yeah.
Okay, web server where the CC instance is installed.
Yes.
Okay. So what this reporter process does is this reporter process reports the log information, so reports the tracking or job log information to the web server so that control center can display it in the web interface.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So with respect to this process, so we have this AB hyphen bridge start, and you have to specify the config file. So you can say hyphen config. So then you have to specify the XML file. Bridge
Correct.
underscore. So this bridge configuration file is provided by your administrator.
Mm.
Okay, the administrator will give you
Administrator.
the
Yeah.
bridge config
Yeah.
file.
Yeah.
So we can use that bridge config file, and then we can just run this command to start the bridge process. Okay, so we can say config bridge underscore config dot XML. So like this, so we can start and we can stop also. So instead of start, so it is stop.
Yes.
The same way, so we have same set of commands available for the reporter as well. So it is instead of AB bridge, so it has to be AB reporter. Okay, so it is AB reporter. And also this bridge and reporter, right? So if see some say for example, if the jobs are not if the instances are not running, okay, if the instances are not running, so then the issue might be the bridge process. There might be
Bridge.
issue with the
Uh,
bridge process. And even if the job is running, and if you are not able to get the tracking details, then the reporter process is
mhm.
having the issue. We have to start and stop the reporter process.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions?
No. No. No.
Right. Fine then. So anything else, Shra? So any other questions than this do you have?
No. 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 Nothing.
Okay. Fine then. So today we'll start with the XML data processing. So because this XML files are very
Yes.
important for the continuous flows. So next we are going to see on the continuous flows. So for this continuous flows, we need to first understand so how the XML data looks like and how to process the XML data in ab initio. Okay. So have you
Yes.
worked on XML data before? XML stands for Extensible Markup Language, right? So have you worked on this XML files before?
Mm, no. 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 No.
Oh, okay, okay, fine then. So then we'll start with the basics. So this XML files, so it is it is lightweight. Okay, it is lightweight and easy to carry the data over the internet. Okay, easy to carry the data over the internet. Okay, so when we say it's a lightweight and it's easy to carry the data over the internet, so the applications of the XML is so we can use XML for the web-based applications. So all your web data, right? So whatever the data that is being taken from the social networking sites, right? So it will be in the form of XML files or in the JSON file. Now the JSON is also popular, right? So it is either an XML or a JSON. So because the reason is, so it is easy to transmit the data over the network. Okay, so it is of lightweight. Okay, it is of lightweight and easy to carry the data over the internet. So that's the reason. So the XML and JSON are popular in the web-based applications. So wherever we get the data from social networking sites, or so all your recommendations that you are getting in the Amazon or in the Flipkart or in the YouTube. So all these
Yes.
data, so we are getting these data in the form of XML. So once we get this XML data, so then they do the processing. So based on the data that they receive and based on the products that we were looking for, so they will give us the recommendations. So all these things are web-based applications. Okay, so the XML is one example. JSON is another example. So we can discuss on the JSON also, JavaScript object notation also we can discuss. I think before the continuous flows class, so we can discuss this JSON data processing also, right? So that you can have an understanding
Mhm.
on so how we do the processing for the JSON file as well. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So the next thing is so the XML is a semi-structured data, right? So when we say semi-structured data,
Mm.
so do you have an idea why it is semi-structured data? So this is a semi-structured data. It's not a structured data. Why it is a semi-structured data?
Uh, yeah, means we we can't define it, or the layout we can't define it in the for that
Rows
we
and
need
columns,
the
right? In the
yes,
rows and
yes,
columns.
yes.
Right? So here information is stored in the form of tag and
Tax and yeah,
values.
values.
Yeah, so it is more of tags and values, right? So it is not with respect to the rows and columns. It's more of tag and values. Right. So now coming back to the XML of the XML of how the XML data looks like. So let's take the credit card. So within the credit card application, so there is a credit card application. So where it gets the details about the different credit card transactions. Okay, where it gets the details about the different credit card transactions. So we will see how these credit card transactions XML document looks like. So the credit card transactions XML, so your XML document will always have multiple categories of data. Okay, so your XML data will have multiple categories of data. So when I say categories, so you can take this example. So you have this credit card. So this we call it as a base element. Okay, this we call it as a base element. So this we call it as a base element. So when I say base element, so this is the parent. So under which, so you're going to have multiple categories, right? So the
Yes,
categories are, so you can take with, if you take the credit card transactions, we have multiple credit cards, right? So we have rewards card, we have cashback card, we have the travel corporate, and like this we have different cards, right? So this is your category one, right? So this is your category. So category one, rewards category. So then travel is in another category, right? So the same way the corporate is in another category, right? So these are all different categories, or we can say it's all sub elements. Okay, so these are all sub elements under the base elements. Okay, or child elements under the base element. So within each of these sub categories, so you will have corresponding the card related transactions. Okay, so when you say rewards, the rewards, all the reward specific details will be there in this rewards sub element. Okay, reward sub element. So which means, so say for example, this rewards may have 5 columns. So the travel may have 10 columns, and the corporate may have 20 columns. So we can store the data with different columns within one single XML document. Okay, so we normally receive the data in one single XML document. So within that XML document, so we will get the data in the form of multiple categories. So we will take one more example. So before that example, so do you have any questions till now?
no, clean.
So we'll take one other example where we can take an example of e-store. Okay, so in the e-store, so you have the books, magazines, and journal. Okay, you have books, magazines, journals, right? So for an for a web store, right? So web e-publications store. So we can have different categories of data, right? So we can have the book related information, magazines related information, journal related information, and we can have many more as well, many more categories. So I just highlighted only 3 categories. So all these 3 categories can be clubbed together, and we can get one single XML document. So and we can read the data from that one single XML document. So say if you see this XML document, so I'll show you this XML document example. So I can see this example. So if you take this books.xml, okay, so if you take this books.xml, so this books is going to have the book related information, okay, that is your base element. So that is having the book related information. So book one, this is the first book, so which is 100. So title is C programming, author is Dennis Ritchie, published date. So you can see the published date. So like this, so we can have n number of books under this book category. So you can see the book ID 101. Okay, this book ID 101. So the here whatever you are specifying, right? So this we call it as an attribute of a tag. Okay, so here book is a tag, ID is an attribute. Okay, this is an ID of a tag book. So and these are all the different tags. Okay, these are all the different other tags that we have under this base tag. So whenever you open a tag, so it must be closed. Okay, it must be closed. So, and you can take the other example. You can see this 101. So this 101, you can see you have the title, author, and the published date. So you will have the same set of columns, same set of tags, and you will have the corresponding values as well. So this is how your data looks like. Okay, this is how your XML data looks like. So any questions with respect to this XML data contents? So you have 2 records in this particular XML file.
Yes, got it.
right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
now we need to know how to read this data, right? So for reading the data from an XML document, so we know in ab initio for reading a data, we need a record format, right? So we need the layout of the file, right? So if it is a database table or a file, we would need a record format. So with the record format, we can be able to read the data. So the same way, so for an XML file also, we need a layout, right? So for the layout, so we have two different types of layout. Okay, so one is the document type definition. Okay, one is DTD, usually refer it as document type definition or DTD. Okay, document type definition, and another one is a schema. Okay, another one is a schema document. Okay, the name we are saying it as a schema document. It's not the database schema. Here it is. We are referring the layout as a schema. Okay, layout as a schema document.
Okay.
So this will have an extension of, so this DTD, right? So this DTD will have an extension of dot DTD. So this DTD is a very old way of defining the layout. Okay, so now we are not making use of this DTD document type definition. So we are always using the schema document. Okay, so we are always using the schema document. So the schema document. So when I say a layout, so what does this layout contains? So if I say a layout, so what does this layout contains?
All these tags, base elements, and all.
Uh, okay. So, but that information we have it in your actual data, right? So, in the data, we have the actual in the XML document, we have the actual data. So, but what do we mean by layout? Say, if we say a layout of an ab initio file. So, if I want to read from a file, so if I want to define a layout, so what do you mean by layout? So, when we say layout, so what does it layout corresponds to?
Call
Columns,
it's
right?
like
Columns in an
records,
XML.
and it's kind of a kind of a, sub record, and under that
Yeah,
we have the
before,
number,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
before, yeah,
elements,
before getting
columns
into,
we can
yeah, yeah.
have it
Yeah,
for this
before getting into
tag.
that, yeah, yeah, I understood on the part that you are telling with respect to converting the schema to the corresponding DML. No, we are not
Yeah.
into that part. We are not into that part. So we are
Okay.
just seeing the
Okay.
layout. So if I have an input flat file, so for a flat file, in order to read that flat file, we need a layout, right? So the layout is nothing but, so we are defining the data type and the column name. Correct. So the layout is
Yes.
nothing but we are defining the data type for the columns that we are using within the input data, right? So the same way for an XML data, so we have to define the data type for each of these columns, right? So for defining the data type for each of these columns, so we have to specify this schema document. So the schema document should contain the details of the data types for the tags which we are going to use within the XML document. Okay, so let me show you the schema document. Okay, I'll show you the schema document for the books. Okay, so you can see the schema document for the books.xsd. So this is how this schema document looks like. Okay, so so this is going to be your first line, right? So first you have the namespace detail. So then you will have the element. So the element is going to be the books, right? So books is the base element. So which is of type books form, which is of type books form. So this books form is going to be a complex type. So when I say complex type is nothing but, so we are going to have more than one element. We are going to have more than one records. Okay, we are going to have more than one records. So if it is having more than one record, so we can specify it as a complex type. Okay, so here you can say books is a base element, right? So books is a base element, so then type is of books form. So if you see this books form, so which is of a complex type. So which means, so we can have multiple book related information, right? So within this books form, you can see the element as book. So where you can have the type as book form. So min occurs and max occurs, you can see min occurs is zero, max occurs can be anything. So which means zero or more number of records, zero or more number of records. There is no restriction in the number of records that we are going to store within this XML document. So after this, you can see this book form. So within this book form, you can see all the columns. So you can see the columns. So author, title. So I think I have provided only few details, but you can see we can have other details also. Author, title, generate price, published date, review, and you can specify the corresponding data type here. Okay, you can specify the corresponding data type here. And as I said, right, attribute. ID is an attribute. So for this ID attribute also, we have to define the corresponding data type. Okay. So this file, as an administrative developer, we don't need to create. So this will be taken care by the application team. So application team, whoever is providing this XML data, they will give this schema document as well. So using the schema document, what we have to do is we have to generate a record format. We have to generate an ab initio record format, and we have to make use of that ab initio record format for reading the data from an XML file. So is this clear?
Yes.
Right. So now, how do we generate the record format from this schema file or XML? So nowadays, so we can directly generate the record format from the XML document also. So there is no need for a schema file. We can generate from schema file, but in ab initio, right? So we can generate the record format from XML document, or if there is a schema file, you can give the schema file also. You can generate the record format from the schema file as well. So how do we generate the record format for this schema document? So because in ab initio, in order to read any files, we need a record format. So for reading an XML file, so we may have a component, yes, so we can use the component. So along with the component, we need to specify the record format also, right? So we have to convert this schema file, right? So we have to convert this schema file into an corresponding ab initio specific record format. So how do we do that? How do we convert schema file into an ab initio specific record format?
I think there is a utility available XSD to DML
XML
as
to
a
DML.
name.
That's right. XML to DML. It is
Yeah,
XML to
XML.
DML. Yeah,
Okay.
it is XML to DML is an utility, so we can use that XML to DML utility. So we will see that XML to DML utility. So using that XML to DML utility, we can generate the record format. So before using this XML to DML utility, so if you want to generate it from the GDE itself, we have an option to generate from the GDE. Okay. So in the record format editor we have, right? So in the record format editor, so we can just go to file. So in the record format editor, you can just go to file, and then you can say, so you can go to file, and then you can say file, and then you can say import XML. So in the import XML, so we have to specify the XSD. We have to specify the XSD or XML
Just
file
give me.
location. We have to set the base element, okay, base element, and the sub elements required for the record format. So once you select
Okay.
all those things, so we have an option, say generate record format. So when you click on that button, so it automatically generates the record format, ab initio specific generate record format. So we can make use of that ab initio specific record format. This is one way. The other way is using the command line XML to DML utility. So using the XML to DML utility, we can generate the record format. You can see the syntax here. So this is the syntax. XML to DML is an utility name. So we have to specify the XML file. So we have to specify the XML file. So when we can specify the schema file, so using this schema option, and then we have to specify the schema file. After specifying the schema file, we have to specify the parser. So then we have to specify the base element. So when you specify the base element, it will generate a record format for us with the type and the metadata type definition. But before that, right? So we are seeing here parser. So do you know what does this parser mean? So what do you mean by a parser? So there are two different parsers available. So one is expat, another one is xseries, xeceres, xseries parser. Okay. So what is the significance of this parser? Why do we need this parser?
I think mm, to convert this XML to the ab initio uh,
No, it is more of an the
compatible
parser.
parser.
No, no, the parser is more with respect to the XML document value. It's an XML parser.
Okay.
It's an XML parser. It's not an ab initio parser. It's an XML parser. So this XML parser is mainly for reading. I would say reading or interpreting the XML document with the help of XSD or DTD. With the help of XSD or DTD. With the help of the schema or the document type definition, with the help of a schema or document type definition, so we can be able to read or interpret the XML document. Okay, there are two different parsers available. Okay, one is XPath, XSeries. In most of the cases, XPath parser works. Okay, in most of the cases, XPath parser works. So if XPath parser is not working, then go for XSeries parser. Do not use XSeries parser by default. So use the XPath parser by default. If the XPath is not working, then go for the XSeries parser. Okay.
Uh, how do we come to know like that parser is not working?
Yeah, so when you try to generate the record format, so it will fail that. So it is not able to
Okay.
interpret the data using the XPath parser. So in that case, you have to change the parser to
Okay.
XSeries. So then you have to regenerate the record format.
Okay, okay.
Right. So the generated record format looks like this. This type, it looks like this type and metadata type definition. So we discussed, right? So type and metadata type definition. So the type
Mm,
definition will have multiple categories, right? So you can see here. So type string t. So if it is one line, so we can just give the type name and the value that you want to. So instead of representing it as string of slash
yeah.
x01, so we are representing it as
Mm,
string underscore t. Instead of representing it as decimal of slash x01, we are representing it as decimal underscore t. So now we have this book. So within this book, so wherever you want to represent this string of slash x01 or decimal of slash x01, so we can just refer it as string t decimal t. Okay, so it's an alias. It's a kind of an alias that we created.
yes.
So you can make use of this alias. So and also you can see this type books. So this books is going to be a record vector. So if it is a complex type, then it is a record vector. So here you can see the book of integer. So it is a length prefix the record vector and this book info. So it's just a name that we are giving for the record vector. So when this is our base element, right? So this is our base element. So we have to set this for the metadata type so that it can traverse the data from this books, right? So the metadata type is to specify from which element that I have
Mm,
to read
yes.
the data, start interpreting the data, right? So it has to start interpreting the data from the books. It has to start interpreting the data from the books. So that's the reason. So we have set this books as a base element. So is this clear? Any questions, Shukash? Do you have any questions?
No, no.
Okay, fine then. So now we will move on to the components that we have to use in Ab initio. So now we know how to see if the source system is providing you an XML document. So we know how to generate a record format. So and we can make use of the generated record format within the Ab initio components for processing the XML data. So now we will see the different components that we can use for reading or creating an XML document. So in order to read the XML component, okay, in order to read the data, okay, in order to read the data, okay, in order to read the data, so we have this XML split. Okay, this XML split we have. So this XML split component will read an XML document. Okay, I'm just giving a high level information. So I will get into the deep, in-depth analysis
Yes.
about each of these components. Okay, so when we say XML split, the XML split is to read the XML document and flatten the input data. Okay, flatten the input data, flatten the data and write it to the output based on the categories. If there are 10 categories, so you can have 10 different outputs. So in the 10 different outputs, you can have the flattened data if it is XML split. Then we have XML combine. So this XML combine is to create an XML document. So this XML split is to read the XML document and flatten it into category category wise data. So if it is XML combined, right? If it is XML combined, so you can write XML documents, write XML document with the help of input data, which is stored as a record vector. So here input should be a record vector. So we can convert this record vector and we can write it in the form of XMLs. Okay. This is the second component. Then we have another component called XML reformat. So this XML reformat. So what does XML reformat will do is, so XML reformat is to read XML document, read or write. Okay, first let's see this read XML document stored in a column. So you are not going to get an XML file. So you are going to have an XML data stored in a column. Okay, read XML document stored in a column. Then you can parse it, parse and flatten it. So and also it can be used to write XML document in a column. Okay, write XML document in a column. It writes XML document in a column. Okay, so writes XML data into a column. Okay, so we can write an XML document into a column. Okay, so it writes an XML data into a column. So and store the XML document in a column. Store the XML data in a column using this XML reformat. So we can either do read. So say for example you have the columns like this. So you have customer ID. So then you have the customer ID and you have the XML underscore document. So this XML document is going to have your customer name and address details. Okay, customer name and address details. So all these details will get stored in the XML document. So what we have to do is we have to flatten this. When they say flatten this, so it has to be customer ID. So then it has to be an individual column, customer name and customer address. So in order to flatten this, so for flattening it out, so we can make use of XML reformat. The same way, so if it is reverse, so if you get the data with customer ID, customer name, and address, if you want to convert that as an XML document, we can use the same XML reformat to achieve the same functionality. Okay, clear?
Okay. Yeah. Clear.
Right. So now we will move on to these components one by one. So the first component that we are going to see is XML split. So XML split. I think so. Before this components come into the come into the existence, right? So there were other components like read XML, write XML, read XML transform, write XML transform. So all these components are depreciated. So that's the reason. So I'm not discussing about those components, deprecated components. Okay, all these components are deprecated. We should not make use of those components. We should always use the newer components. We should use XML
Mm.
split, XML combine, and read XML in an XML reformat. Okay, we should always use
Okay.
this new components. Okay, so fine that.
Yes.
So any questions? Do you have any questions, Shivash?
Mm, have it in XML reformat, but when we see it actually during the
Yeah.
hands-on,
We can,
actually,
we can discuss. We
then I
can
think
discuss
it will get clear.
We can discuss. Yep. We can discuss. So first, let's start with the XML split. So what this XML split will do is, so the XML split reads the input data. It reads the input data. Okay, it reads the input data. Okay, it reads the input data as a character stream of bytes. What do you mean by character stream of bytes? What do you mean by character stream of bytes? What is the DML that you have to give for the input file component? So you have to read it with the help of an input file component, right? The XML document. So after reading it with the input file component, then you have to use XML split. So then you can categorize into multiple outputs. How do you
Okay.
do that?
Huh? I have no idea. So,
Okay, not a problem. When we say character stream of bytes, so it is more of a string of one. So we are going to read it as string of one. Okay, character stream of bytes, one byte at a time. Okay, we are going to read as one byte at a time. So which is like, so you're going to have the input file component. It's like, so you're going to have an input file component. So the input file component will have an XML file. So then we are going to use an XML splitter component. So this XML split component output, we can split it. Say you can take an example of the book, by the e-store. So within the e-store, we have two things, right? So one is books, and you can have the magazine. So we can write the books into one flow, magazines into another flow. We can have two output flows. So where you can store the books information in one flow and the magazine related information in another flow. Okay.
okay.
So this books is going to be, let me give this here. The books is going to be out 0 and magazines is going to be out 1. So before discussing on the parameters, okay, before discussing on the parameters, so let me show you this XML document, how to generate the record format, how to set the base element, how to get the record format first. So then we will come to this parameters. Okay. Okay, so let me show you this. Yeah, you can see this. So whatever the layout that I mentioned, right? So where you have an input XML document. So after that, you have an XML split component, so which separates this books in one flow, magazines in another flow. So in order to generate the record format, so here it is going to be. So here, what does it mean? So here, this is also a character stream of bytes only. So it's what does it mean? So string of int, what does this corresponds to? So I think this we discussed, right? I think I'm not sure in
Hmm.
which class that I discussed. So okay, so string of integer, right? So it is most likely this maximum number of bytes this integer can take. So it can accommodate that many number of bytes for this particular column.
Yes.
That's right. So this is also another way of representing the character stream of bytes. Okay, so we can define it as string of another data type. So we can use string of one, or you can say string of integer also. Okay, so we can give it like this. So we have this input file. So after reading this, we have this XML spread. So for this XML spread, so in the output port zero, okay, in the output port zero, whenever you open the XST file, okay, whenever you open the XST file, and if you say load, so we can open the file using this three dot. Using the three dot, we can locate the XST file. And once you locate this XST file, you have to say load. So once you say load, so you will get a data like this. So where you can see catalog. So under catalog, you have the books. So which books will have the book related information, and you will have a magazines. Magazines will have the magazine related information. So here we have to set the base element. So here the base element. So we have to set whichever is the complex type. So whichever is repeating multiple times. So whatever be the number of records that is being created. So uh, that particular tag should be set as a base element. So in this example, this book is having 0 to n occurrence, right? So the book can occur more than once. So we have to set this book. Okay, we have to set this book as a base element. So you can see the magazines also. In the magazines also, you can see magazines. Under magazines, you have magazine. So now we have to set the magazine is having 0 to more occurrence. We have to set the magazine as a base element. So once you set this, and if you say import, okay, if you say import, so you will have the record format generated like this. So you can see a record format generated like this. So where you can see for the books. So you have ID, title, author, and for the magazines you have ID, name, publishers. Okay, you have the ID, name, publisher. Along with that, so you can see two different fields which gets generated automatically. Okay, so this will get generated only in the XML split component, and also in the XML combine we need these two sequence numbers. Okay, so these two sequence numbers are very important. Okay, so one is the sequence number at a document level. Okay, one is sequence number at a document level. So for a document, the sequence number is always one, right? So the book sequence within the document, so the book is a category. So within the book, so book sequence number will get incremented for every book record. The same is applicable for your magazine. So for magazines also, the sequence number is at a document level. So it is always one. Document level, the sequence number is always one. For the magazine sequence number, based on the number of records that you have, so the magazine sequence number will get changed. So before moving on, so do you have any question in this generated record format? So any questions in this generated record format?
So this will only for the base element we have it, right? The
Correct. So based
sequence
on the base
number.
element that we set, correct. Based on the base element that we set, it automatically
Okay.
generates the record format like this. Correct.
Right. And we have sequence number also and the book sequence number also. So
Correct.
this sequence number I got it means for every instance get it goes on increasing, it will increase it by one. But
Correct.
what this book sequence number
Okay. Book
actually
sequence number, we can have multiple records, right? So within the book tag, we can have multiple book related information. Correct. So we can have more than one book related information. I can show you the data. If I show you the data, it will be clear. So you can see this data. So when you check this data, so you can check the data. So where you have two book records and you have one magazine records. Now check the book sequence and the magazine sequence number. So the sequence number is always at the document level. So that's the reason the sequence number is one for the books as well as for the magazines file. But check the
Okay,
book
okay,
sequence number and the magazine sequence number.
okay. Yeah, got you. Yes, yes.
Right. So
Yeah.
in order to do this, right, we need to set the parameters, right? So we need to set the parameters. We will
Mm.
see on the what are all the parameters that you have to define. So the parameters that you have to define is we have to specify the parser. So the parser is going to be the default is expert. So we can go with the default parser. So we can change it to X series. So only if expert is not working. Right. So and what else we have to give? Other than this, what else we have to specify? We have to specify the parser, we are reading and input data, and we have to specify the number of outputs, right? So we have how many number of outputs that you want to specify create. It specifies the number of output or error or reject ports. So default is default is one. If you want to increment, so we can increment. So based on the number of categories, you can increase this. Okay,
Okay.
just give me a minute, 1 minute.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
Okay. So yeah, I have resumed the recording. Okay. So
Yeah.
so with respect to the parameters, right? So we have to specify the count parameter based on this number of categories that we are having within the XML document. So we can generate that many number of outputs. Okay. So then we have other parameters, but we will not use other parameters. Okay. So we have parameters to set the base element. Okay, so if it is
Mm-hmm.
one, we can, it is good to set the base element. But if there are multiple categories, so then there is no point in selecting the base element. So we can just specify we can generate the record format specifying whatever the categories of data that we need. So we can just extract only the category specific data. Okay, so we can
Okay.
do that. So these are all the two parameters. I would say these are all the two mandatory parameters that we have to specify. So other than this, we have other optional parameters, but we won't use those parameters. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So this is for reading an XML document and flatten it. So parse it and then flatten it into a category-wise data using this XML split component. So we can also create, okay, we can also create the XML data. So using a component called XML combine. Okay, using the XML combine. So you can this will write XML document based on the input data. Okay, so your input data should have sequence number and category wise sequence number. Okay, it should have these two columns, sequence number and category wise sequence number for creating the XML document. So based on this only, the component will create the XML document. Okay, so we can find this component under the translate folder. Ports for this component, so you will have a similar set of ports. So here you will have multiple inputs in INN. So I'm just giving INN, so which means it corresponds to IN0, IN1, IN2. Okay, so then you have the log, you have the output port, then you will have the log port, then error port, then reject port. Right. So the next thing is on the parameters. So we will see the parameters later. So I must first let's try the requirements. Okay, so say for example, so you have an input file. Okay, so you have an input. I would say it's a flat file. So the requirement is, so you need to generate a sequence number. Okay. So what is the component that you have to use to generate the sequence number? After generating the sequence number, so you have to use XML combine to write it in the form of XML document, and you can write it to an output file. So can you tell me what is the component that you have to use to generate the sequence number? I have to
based
generate a
on
sequence
the
number.
reformat.
Based on the number
Yeah,
of records, I have to generate the sequence number. But reformat will not
yeah.
store the previous value,
No,
right?
no,
So
reformat and then the roll up based on the. Uh,
no, why do we need to go for rollup? Rollup is an
okay,
aggregate component, right? So for a group, it will give you
okay,
one
okay,
record.
okay. Sorry, sorry. Scan. Then
Yeah, that's right. Scan with null key, right? So if you
yeah,
give scan with null key, so it will generate a sequence number, which is sequence number is nothing but a cumulative summary, right? So sequence number
yeah.
it generates. Once it generates the sequence number, then you can give it to this XML combine. So the XML combine expects sequence number and category wise sequence number. So with those information only, it combines data and write it as an XML document in the output. Okay. So with respect to the parameters, I will come to the parameters. So but before that, so we will see the example, then we'll come to the parameters. So the next thing is so you can take this, you can see this. So where you can have ID title author, you have ID name publisher, you have books magazine file without the sequence number. So what we are going to do is we are going to use a scan component with the null key. So within the scan component we are going to have a count. So based on the count, so we are going to increase this book or magazine sequence number. So your sequence number is always one for this books or the magazines. So only thing that we have to take care is book sequence number or magazine sequence number. So we need to specify the book sequence number with the cumulative count, magazine sequence number with the cumulative count. So you can see the transform of the scan. The scan transform that I have specified is common for the book flow as well as for the magazines flow, right?
Hmm.
And then using XML combine, so we are just writing it to an output file. So in the output file, so we are writing it based on the new line delimiter.
Yeah.
So the parameters that you have to specify here is so within this XML combine, so you have to specify the count. So this based on the count, it determines the number of input parameters. So here it is input parameters. So there it is an output ports. So here it is an input ports. Right? So count is one parameter. And the next thing is so we have to specify. So the next thing is we have to specify the schema document. So we have to specify the schema document so that based on the sequence number and book sequence number and the schema, so it creates the XML file. Okay, so we have to specify the schema document. We have to specify the schema document. So then we have another formatting option. So we have pretty formatting, add header. Okay, so add header, indentation size, indent size. So this petty formatting is more of so it's more of so whatever the XML document it generates, right? So in the generated XML format, so whether it has to add whether it has to add the spaces, okay? So whether it has to add spaces in the generated XML document or not. So whether it should have a header. So this will have true or false. So whether we need a header or a header is required for the XML document. Indentation size. So we can set the default is one. Default is one. So if we want to increase the indentation size, you can increase the indentation size. So it can be changed to three or four. So that instead of having one space, it is like so. If I have this XML document like this books, okay. So the default indentation is one. So if I specify more number of indentation, so it will add more number of spaces. So if I say five, it will add five number of spaces. So it is having five spaces from the beginning, from the start, from the starting. Okay. So we can change this indentation size. So we can say we can enable this pretty formatting. So we can turn on or turn off this pretty formatting. Okay.
This intent size is for the base element or for the sub elements.
All
This
it is
category.
applicable for all.
All.
It is applicable for all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So starting from base element, so all the elements, right? So all the sub elements. So it is also based on the indentation size that so here starting from so if you have five, so from here the next line also you will have so you will have first five and you will have next five, 10, then this book, then you will have 5, 10, and then 15, then you will have this details. This is how it will be, right?
Okay.
So any questions? Any questions till now?
No.
Okay. So now you have assignments, so it's more of I will give you this books XML, magazines XML, eStore XML. Okay. So what you have to do is so you have to read this eStore XML using XML split and creates books and magazine file. So you have to create magazines and books files and write XML document eStore.xml using the XML combine component. So this is to practice this XML split and XML combine component. Okay.
Hmm.
Right. So now we will move on to the next one. There's another important one. So which is an XML reformat, right? So this XML reformat is nothing but so it reads the XML data stored in a column. This is very important. So you're going to have the XML data stored in a column. So you're going to parse it and write it in separate columns. So we can take this example. So you have this input record format where you have this input file ID and the XML document. You can have the data like this. So where the file ID looks like this. So for one, so you'll have the book ID one. For two, you have the second book related information. So this is how my data looks like. Okay, this is how my data looks like. So what we need is, so we need to flatten this out. So where in the target you need to have file ID, book ID, title, and author. So that is going to be your output record format. So the component wise, so it is an input file. So you're going to read from an input file, right? So you're going to read from an input file. So it is an input file component. So after reading this input file, so then you are going to have the XML reformat. So after this XML reformat, so you are going to write it. So when you are going to write it, so you're going to have an output file. So in the output file, so you're going to have the output file, you're going to have the multiple columns. Okay, so in the output file, you're going to have multiple columns. So with this, right? So if we have to do this, okay, if we have to do this, so how do we do this? So if within this XML reformat, so we have to write the transformation logic, right? And also we have to define the parameters within this XML reformat to get this functionality. So what we need to do is, so we need to write, so in the XML reformat, it is more with respect to the ports, it is an input and output. So you'll have input port, output port, log port, error port, and reject port. Okay, so and the location for this component, so you can find this component in the translate folder. With respect to the parameters, so it will have a transform parameter. So within the transform parameter, we have to write a logic. Okay, so we have to write a logic to convert this XML document into individual columns. Okay, so we have to write the transformation logic. Okay, we have to write the transformation logic to convert the XML doc into individual into separate columns. Okay, so we will see how we can write the logic. Okay, so we will see how we can write the logic within the transform so that we can create we can separate it out. We can have separate columns. We can store the data in different columns. Okay, so let me see how we can do this. Okay, so you will have like let's write the transformation logic. Okay, so I think I have provided this output record format as well. So now I will show you the transformation logic. So the transformation logic looks like this. Okay, the transformation logic looks like this. So it is your reformat component. It is in the reformat, right? So you will have outer colon colon XML underscore reformat of input data. Okay, so equal to begin and end. So here, what we need to do is, so we have predefined functions for parsing the XML data. Okay, we have predefined functions for passing the XML data. We have string functions, metaprogramming functions, right? So decimal date time functions, right? The similar way we have functions for parsing the XML
Okay.
data. We have functions for
Okay.
parsing the XML data. So we need to use those functions. Okay, we need to use those functions. So what you have to do is, so we have to say let string of blank. So v underscore XML. Okay, v underscore XML. So we have a function to parse the XML document. So first we need to parse the XML document, right? So this will get stored as there is a predefined type called XML underscore there is a predefined type called XML underscore element. Okay, there is a type called XML underscore element. So we have to create a variable with this type and we have to say XML underscore parse. We have to say XML underscore parse of input XML document, which is in dot XML underscore doc. Terminate with semicolon. So now what we did was, so we just parsed the XML document and we stored the result in a variable called v underscore XML. So now the logic that we have to write here is out dot star in that star along with that, so we need to get the elements, right? So it is more like, so out dot id, so we need to get the id, right? So for getting the id, so it is v underscore xml. So v underscore xml is having the entire xml document. So from the entire xml document, so we need to get the id, right? So we need to get the id, right? So we need to get the id, and we need to get the corresponding data. So it is c data. Okay. So for getting this, there is a function called xml underscore get underscore element. Okay, there is a function called xml get element. So for this, we have to specify this variable that we created after parsing the xml data. Then we have to specify the column that we are interested in, and we have to say dot c data to get the details. The same thing we have to do for other columns as well. So we have other columns, right? So where you have the title and author, right? So you have the title and author. You have the title and author. So we can do it for the title and author. So instead of ID, so we have to give title. So instead of here also we can give change this as author. So this will get the ID. This will get the ID tag content and store it into the ID field in the target. Okay, clear?
Yeah, clear. What is C? mm,
C
Sorry,
data
sorry,
is a
sorry.
kind of, okay. C data
Yeah.
is nothing but, so it returns a record. Okay, this returns a record. This XML get element function returns a record. So the record is having a column called C data. Okay, it is one of the column name which will give you the name,
Okay.
which will give you the value of this column. If you want to get the name of the if you want to get the name, okay, if you want to get the column name, then you have this dot name. So you can use, instead of C data, if you use dot name, that will give you the column name. That will give you the XML element name. Okay, that will give you the XML name. But we are interested in the data, right? So we are interested only in the data. Since we are interested in the data, so we are making use of the column called a C data. It's a predefined column. Okay, it's a predefined column which is already there in Abinitio that will give us the value of particular tag. When you give the when you give the when you give a tag, so that within the tag, whatever be the value, it will get that value.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Right? So like this is for reading, right? This is for reading. So if I want to create an XML document like this, okay, if I want to create an XML document like this, so this is more of a reverse case, right? So where you have the data like this in the input, so you have to convert this into like this. So where you need to have, it is more of an output record format now. So we are going to write it as an XML document in the target, right? So you're going to write it as an XML document in the target. So your input record format is like this. Input record format is like this. So what we are going to do is we are going to convert this into like this. So you're going to convert this into an output record format where you are going to have the file ID and the XML document. So in order to do this activity, the same components we have to use, right? So the same components that we have to use. So XML reformat and an output file. So only thing is your DML is different. Your DML is different, right? So your DML input and output DML is different. And within the XML reformat, we are going to create an XML document, right? So you're going to create an XML document. So we need to see how we can write the logic, right? So we need to see how we can write the logic within this XML reformat component. So we will see how we can write the logic. Okay. So here also we can make use of the functions for processing the XML data. Okay, for processing the XML data, so we have set of functions. We can make use of those functions. So we will see how we can make use of those functions. Okay, so first, what we have to do. So first, we have to create a document, right? So we can say XML underscore begin underscore document. So the document that you have to create is books. So we can give it as books and terminate with semicolon. So then we can say XML underscore begin underscore element. So the document is books, and within the books, so you have the element, right? So the element is going to be book, right? So within this book, so then we are going to have, so within this element, so we are going to have another element called ID. So within this element, so we are going to have another element called ID. So within this ID, within the so not within the ID. So for this ID tag, right? So for this ID tag, so the data we have to specify. So it is XML underscore add underscore C data. So C data, that is the reason we are referring there as a C data. So here we have to pass the input ID and we have to store it as a value. So then we have to say XML end element. So wherever we are opening the tag, right? So we have to close it. So we have to say XML underscore end element, XML underscore end underscore element. So what this will do is, so this will create tags like this. Okay, this will create books. So within the books, so you will have book. So within the book, so it'll add the attribute. So book, sorry, it is not an attribute here. So it is an element. So it is ID. It'll add ID, and so within the ID, so it'll add some data, whatever the input data that we get. Say for example, we are getting 100, so it'll just be 100. So and here it is going to be slash ID, backward slash ID. Okay. So the same we have to
Okay.
repeat for the other columns as well. Okay, the same we have to repeat for other columns as well. So we have three columns, right? ID, title, and pub author, right? So we have to do the same thing here. So here it is, instead of ID, it should be title, and we have to add the data. So if the data we are getting it from the input, so we can say in dot title, and here it is going to be in dot author. So it is author, and here it is in dot author. So once this is done, so we need to close the other documents also. So here we opened two documents, right? So we have to close those two documents as well. So we have to say XML underscore end underscore element, and we have to close the document. So we have to say XML underscore end underscore document. After this, so we can say out dot star colon colon in dot star. Then we can say out dot XML underscore doc. Now we have created this XML document, right? So we have to assign it. So we can say XML underscore format. So we can do the formatting, and then we can assign the XML document and write it to the output.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, but in this case, we do have info on the what are the element or what are the tags we have it, number of tags we have it
We need to
in
know.
the elements
That's correct.
and
Yeah, that's right. So it's little tricky. Yeah,
yeah.
tricky part. So we need to remember these functions, but the functions are these many functions we have. We have to use these functions only. But we need to remember the columns that we have to add it to the XML document, and we have to write that many number of statements repeatedly.
Yes, yes, yes.